Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today I'm taking on another 5-paint challenge. I'm going to be painting up this Space Marine in the colours of the Dark Angels. So for this I'll be using Caliban Green, Abaddon Black, White Scar, Leadbelcher and Mephiston Red. As you can see, I've primed the model black, as this will give us a nice even base coat for all of the colours to work from. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm coming in with Caliban Green. I'm going to paint all of the power armour on the Space Marine. So first of all I'm taking some of this, putting it on my palette. I'm going to thin it down with a little bit of water so it runs nice and smoothly off of the brush. But now I'm going to start applying it all over the power armour. Now this will take a couple of coats to get a good even coverage all over the power armour on the Space Marine. But just take your time, work in a couple of thin layers and build up to a nice solid cover all over that power armour. By keeping the paint nice and thin, we're not going to obscure any of the details on the power armour. We're going to build up to a nice even coat all over the Space Marine. For some of you, this may be the first Heretic model I'm painting in the 5-paint challenge. And I agree with you, Dark Angels are clearly a Heretic Space Marine chapter, but they do appear on the list of first founding Loyalist Space Marines, so I'm going to paint one up today. And as you can see, after the first coat, coverage is still a little bit patchy, so I'm coming back in with a second coat of Caliban Green and building up to that nice smooth, even base colour all over that power armour. By keeping this nice and thin, working in 2 or 3 layers, we will build up to that solid colour all over this power armour. And after a couple of coats of Caliban Green, we've got a nice smooth, even coverage all over the power armour to the Space Marine. So next up, with some Mephiston Red, I'm going to paint all of the weapons on the Space Marine. So that'll be the casing here to his bolt pistol, covering this with a couple of layers of Mephiston Red to build up to a nice smooth, even base coat. I'm also going to paint his chainsword as well. So I'm going to catch all of the body and the crossguard of his chainsword with a couple of coats of Mephiston Red. And after a couple of layers of Mephiston Red, we've built up to an even base colour on all of the casings to the weapons. So next up, with some Abaddon Black, I'm going to come in and paint all of the strapping, the belt and the undersuit to the Space Marine. So I'm going to catch any bits of strapping, like these here, on his back with a coat of Abaddon Black. I'm also going to catch his belt as well with a layer of Abaddon Black going around his waist. Being nice and neat here, trying to not get this over any of the power armour we've already painted. And finally, I'm going to paint all of these parts here to his undersuit. So it's all these ridged areas here sticking out between all the joins on the power armour. I'm going to catch these with a layer of Abaddon Black, being nice and careful around all of the power armour so we just get this over the undersuit. Make sure you also catch these ones on his arms as well. Just look over the model and find any parts of undersuit and catch them with some Abaddon Black. And with that Abaddon Black applied, we've picked out all of the black details on the Space Marine. So next, with some White Scar, I'm going to come in and paint the Aquila on his chest. I'm being nice and neat here so I don't get this over any of the Caliban green power armour. I'm just going to pick out all of the feathers and the skull of the Aquila with a couple of layers of white scar to build up to a nice solid white colour on the Aquila. And with that white skull applied, there's only one base colour left to apply to the Space Marine. And that will be Leadbelcher, which I'm going to come in and paint all of the metallic areas on the Dark Angel. So there'll be areas here like his gun, the magazine, and any other details on the gun, picking these out with some Leadbelcher. I'm also going to pick out all the teeth and the engine on the chainsword. And I'm going to pick out any of these vents here on his backpack. I'm going to catch these with a coat of Leadbelcher. And with that Leadbelcher applied, we've picked out all of the metallic details and we've applied all of our base coats to our Dark Angel. So the next thing we're going to do is start shading the miniature. So for this, I'm coming in with some Abaddon Black. I'm going to apply this on my palette, thin it down with lots and lots of water. You really want this to flow really easily off of the brush. So just keep adding water so it's really smooth and flows like a shade paint. Whereas if you're not just using 5 paints, you can use Nuln Oil for this step. But just keep thinning it down till it's got this really thin consistency. And now I'm going to apply a pin shade to all of the recesses of the power armour. So using a small brush, I'm going to work my way around the model, and in every recess, every gap, every panel edge, I'm going to apply a thin line of this thinned down Abaddon Black into all of the recesses. This is a step that will take a while, but it's really worth doing because it really makes all of that armour pop and brings out all the definition to the power armour. So just take your time at this step, work your way around the model, and at the edge of every panel and in every gap, apply a thin line of this watered down Abaddon Black as a pin shade. Try and keep the shade nice and thin, but if at any point you do come in a little bit too thick, once it's dried, you can come in with some Caliban green and paint over those areas again. Just make sure you work your way all the way around the model, picking out every panel with a little bit of this shade. Make sure you remember to do the helmet on the model, as this will be a focal point of the miniature, so it's really worth spending your time. And make sure you get these areas really neat. I'm also going to catch these recesses here on his bolt pistol with a little bit of this pin shade as well, just to bring out some definition to that Mephiston red. And then I'm going to apply this all over the Aquila on his chest. Make sure this doesn't pull too much. If it does start pulling, you can wick it away with a dry brush, but add some definition into those feathers. I'm also going to apply it all over all of the metallic details as well. This will run into the recesses, add some definition, and darken down that Leadbelcher a little bit. So just make sure you apply this in all the panels and over all of the metallic details. If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And with those shades now dry, you can see it's really added definition all over that power armour really made all of those panels stand out. So now with some Caliban green and white scar, this is about a 60-40 mix. I'm going to mix the two colours together. Add just a little bit of water to thin it down so it runs nice and smoothly from my brush. Now I'm going to start edge highlighting all of the panels on the power armour. So for this, you pick out every edge to every raised part of the power armour and apply a thin edge highlight of this mix along the edge of every panel. This works really well together with the pin shading to really add definition and make all of these panels pop out. So once again, just take your time at this step, work your way around the model, and at the edge of every panel, every line, every raised edge, apply a thin line of this mix as an edge highlight. Now try and keep these lines nice and thin, but if you do come in a little bit too thick, you can come back in with some Caliban green again and thin the lines back down to something you're more happy with. Just much like the pin shade, just take your time at this step, work your way around the model, and make sure you pick out every detail with an edge highlight of this mix. And once again, also really make sure you focus on the helmet and pick out all of these details, as this will be a focal point on the miniature. And with that edge highlight applied, you can see it's really made that armour stand out and added loads of interest all over the Space Marine. So next, with some Mephiston red, I'm going to come in and paint the eye lenses to the miniature. So I'm just sinking a little bit of Mephiston red into his eye lenses to make them stand out. And now with some Mephiston red and white scar in about a 60-40 mix again. I'm going to mix the two colours together on my palette. Add a little bit of water, as always, just to thin them down so they run nice and smoothly. And now I'm going to start edge highlighting all of the weapons on the model. So much like with the power armour, I'm just tracing my way around all of the edges to all the panels on his weapons and giving them a thin edge highlight of this mix. For the chainsword here, for the bottom one by the teeth, I've got to use a nice smooth hand to get one line. But then for this back edge, because it's nice and sharp, you can use the side of your brush to get a consistent line all the way across the back of that power sword. And also, I'm going to sink a little bit of this into the bottom of the eye lenses just to highlight the eyes. And with that mix applied, there's all the red areas on the model highlighted. So now with some white scar, I'm going to come in and highlight the Aquila. So for this, I'm just applying some of this on the areas that got darkened down by that shade, bringing them back up to a lighter white colour. So pick out all the feathers, the top of the skull, and all the raised details with a little bit of white scar, just to bring them back to a brighter white colour. But leaving that shade in the recesses will add definition all over the Aquila while keeping it as a bright white colour. And finally I'm sinking a little spot of white scar into the back corner of each of the eye lenses, as this will look like a reflection point. And with that white applied, there's only one step left to apply to the model, and that will be to highlight all of the black areas. So with some white scar and Abaddon Black, in about a 50-50 mix of these two colours, I'm going to mix them together on my palette again, thinning them down with a little bit of water. And now I'm going to apply an edge highlight to all of the black areas. So all of the strapping, I'm just catching any raised details. Same with his belt, I'm going to put a thin line at the top and bottom of his belt. I'm also going to catch this part here at the back of his chainsword. And all of the undersuit as well. I'm going to pick out all of these ridges with a thin highlight of this grey mix on all of those raised parts of the undersuit. Now if you're not just using 5 paints like I am here, Mechanica Standard Grey is really good for this, but as I've only got black and white to work with to make a grey, I've mixed a colour that's close enough. And finally, with some Abaddon Black, I'm going to come in and just tidy up the base on the model. It's being nice and neat around the feet. Just going to apply a couple of layers of Abaddon Black all over the base to tidy it up and really finish the model off. And with the base tidied up, that is how to paint the Dark Angel Space Marine using just 5 paints. Please let me know in the comments down below, what other models from 40k would you like to see me paint in the 5 paint challenge? If you would like to keep up to date with my painting journey, please follow me on the social medias that are in the description down below. But thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy painting!